Good evening. Tonight, you and I are going to take a little bit of a journey back into the past, all the way back to 1970, which was when this was made. This here is a Besson New Standard 4-valve compensating euphonium. It was made in the latter half of 1970 in England. And this is an instrument that's been sitting in a band storeroom for years, and despite that, all the valves still work, all the slides come out. It's incredible the way that some of these older instruments still work flawlessly, even though they've suffered years of neglect. They smell a bit musty, if I tell the truth, but it functions still very well. So let's take a little bit of a tour. Now, many of you will probably be somewhat familiar with compensating euphoniums and their overall design, and there isn't really too much difference here. We've got the standard first, second, third valves with the fourth on the side. The fourth is missing its valve cap, which is a little bit of a shame, so you've sort of got to put your finger on a little stalk here. The fourth valve tuning slide is here and operates wonderfully. The main tuning slide is on the back and also operates lovely and smooth. Because it's a compensating instrument, it also has a second set of tuning slides on the back, 1, 2 and 3. These extra loops of tubing get invoked only when the fourth valve is depressed, hence the name compensating. Now, this instrument was made in 1970, and because it's an older style instrument, it has a few things that you won't necessarily find the same on a modern instrument. Number one, the bell is quite a lot smaller than what we would see from modern euphoniums, particularly some of the big ones. It does have a large bore lead pipe, but this part of the metal here is a different sort of colour, different sort of quality to the rest of it, so I'm thinking that this has actually been converted into a large bore euphonium at some point. I think it was originally a smaller bored instrument. This instrument has a couple of faults. The first is that it empties itself on your lap through the bottom of, this is what I'm using to keep my pants dry, through the bottom of these three valves. They leak quite substantially, and I think that might be because the valves, great as they are slightly corroded, and in a couple of places there's a little bit of pitting and some rust. That may also contribute to the second fault this instrument has, in which the first valve, if used vigorously, has a bit of a metallic clunk to it. Next fault, the fourth valve is missing its valve cap, so you impale your finger and sometimes you get it stuck, as I've just done now. But frankly, for an instrument of its age, I think it's actually in remarkable condition, and some of these things could be quite easily fixed if one had the time and the inclination. One of the other things to note about this instrument is it was made at a time where they used metal, as opposed to many instruments now which are made out of Chinesium in Kraptakistan. This was made out of metal in England, and as a result of that, it's fairly weighty. Thankfully, with the euphonium you can in most cases just rest it on your lap, but if you were to march with this thing, you'd probably get a little bit tired fairly quickly. But that being said, despite the fact the instrument wheezes on yourself, despite the fact that it is 47 years old, it's actually really nice to play. It holds its tune pretty well. There's the usual sort of intonation issues that you're going to get with an instrument of this age, but because the tuning slides all move very freely, you can actually remedy that yourself without some of the gizmos that newer instruments may have, such as main tuning slide triggers. Anyway, I'll play something for you tonight so that you might get an example, an idea of the merits of this instrument.